Trivia question for today. Who was the first infantry division to have troops on ground in Europe after Pearl Harbor? If you guessed anybody but the Red Bulls of the 34th Infantry Division, sorry, you're out. The 34th Infantry Division was activated 85 years ago today in 1941. They were a National Guard unit out of Minnesota, Iowa, North and South Dakota, and they were activated along with a large number of other National Guard units that were federalized that year. They took part in the Louisiana maneuvers, and then Pearl Harbor happened. The U.S. military decided that they were going to send a few units of the 34th to Ireland in secret. And January 24th, 1942, the 34th landed in Ireland. The young man they had to be the ceremonial first American in Ireland, his name was Private Milburn H. Hinkey. He was with the 134th Field, he was with the 133rd Field Artillery Battalion. He ended up winning a Silver Star during the battles in Tunisia, ended up getting hurt in Sicily, and went home and survived the war, which I think is pretty cool. During their time in Ireland, though, the 34th also was the birthplace for the Rangers of the United States Army. Captain William O. Darby of the 34th Infantry Division was tasked with designing a unit that was based upon the British Commandos, the 1st Ranger Battalion. Over 80% of those volunteers came from the 34th Infantry Division. November 1942, the 34th deployed to Africa to take part in Operation Torch, where they landed in Algeria and pushed through to Tunisia. In fact, the 34th also holds the claim of having been the first artillery shell fired in combat. The 175th Field Artillery shot at the Germans outside of Majez El Bab in Tunisia in December 1942. They would take heavy losses at Kasserine Pass. 168th would lose over half of their battalion as they were routed out as the Germans rolled over them, pushing them back. And that would later affect them, as after the battles in Tunisia were won, after the war in North Africa was basically wrapped up in May 1943, the 34th Infantry Division had to rest and build back up strength before they could go back into combat. They did go back into combat. The 151st Field Artillery Battalion was sent to back up the 36th Infantry Division as they landed in Salerno in September 1943. In fact, the 36th Chief of Staff says it had not been for the 151st Field Artillery Battalion, they would not have held the beachhead at Salerno. The 34th joined up with the 151st a few weeks later and became a part of Mark Clark's 5th Army as they pushed up through and past the Gustav Line. They took part in Anzio, aided in the breakout, and eventually pushed into Rome with the 5th Army. However, unlike the other divisions that had been with them in Italy, such as the 36th and the 45th and the 3rd, the 34th actually stayed in Italy after the fall of Rome. They pushed up and kept pushing the Germans out through the top of the boot, eventually having them surrendered in Milan, May 2nd, 1945. After which the unit was redeployed home. All told, they spent 517 days in combat over the course of, 4 years? That's a lot. They have 11 Medals of Honor. The unit itself was awarded the Croix de Guerre with palms from the French. They had 98 Distinguished Service Crosses and over 1,000 Silver Stars. That's a lot of heroism, a lot. The 34th Infantry Division has been really interesting to read about. There are stories that I'm seeing in the records and the histories, and of course I'm studying the field artillery and how they aided the infantry. So Kasserine Pass for me is going to be a very interesting battle, because at first, you know, everything falls apart. If you know anything about Kasserine Pass, you know that it's considered one of the great American defeats of World War II. There is some argument now, there's been some new scholarship that I've seen that claims that it was not, in fact, a defeat. In fact, it was an Allied victory, because we did end up pushing Rommel at Kasserine Pass. We ended up pushing him all the way back past Kasserine and towards the coast. But it was that first few days that really, the casualties just built up. In fact, what it would be, 1942, 84th anniversary of the Battle of Kasserine Pass is coming up, and I'm going to do some videos on that, I've no doubt, so stay tuned. And if you've made it this far, thank you. I love you. Have a great day.